Welcome back to the podcast, man. Super excited to have today's guest. We love guests from around the country, all levels, and I'm just super excited to introduce you to today's guest and what he's got going on in his awesome journey here in the coaching profession. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful, the head coach of Brewton-Parker College, Mr. Adam Cokonougher. Did I nail it? Did I get the name
You
right?
did. You did.
Man, I'm going to call it a day right there. That's successful. Super unique last name. Is that German? I don't know. I'm not really
I
good at that stuff.
so actually, oddly enough, one of our family members is like a historian. He's written an entire book about our origin, and it is Dutch.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought just based on the beard and the look that it was going to be Viking or something like that.
Yeah, I wish. I wish.
I love it, man. Well, thanks for joining us here today on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast, Adam. We have coaches from literally around the world, but we obviously mainly focus here in the 50 states. Super excited to learn your journey, man. We've kind of I don't want to say we've gotten to know each other because it's social media, so there's a little bit of shallowness to that as far as how much we've gotten to know each other. But we've had communication and stuff through Twitter, my favorite social media place, and I just thought seeing what kind of success you guys are having there at Brewton-Parker. Honestly, not having heard of Brewton-Parker before you and I connected on Twitter, and I'm kind of a guy that likes to know every college and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of like, well, how do I not know this college? So just super excited to have you here. So let's get into it, man. I'm excited to learn this journey. Want to start, Adam? Where does coaching begin for you? And what I mean by that, let me explain that a little bit as you're thinking about your answer here. Is coaching is something that when we're athletes happens to us, and then at some point there's kind of a stage. So coaching happens to us, that might be stage one. Coaching becomes like a thought in our mind of like, oh, wait a minute, this actually could be a career. That may be stage two, and then stage three is actually getting into coaching. So where does coaching begin for you?
The first time where I really got into coaching was with Powder Puff football in high school. Um, our our Powder Puff team was for our class was really good, and we were fortunate enough that our Powder Puff we did freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So there's some schools that just do junior, senior.
Yeah.
We did all the classes, and we only ever lost one game. I didn't jump in until sophomore year, but we only ever lost one game with our Powder Puff, which was really neat that our class was dominant from freshman clear through senior year. But it was mostly because my best friend at the time, he was our quarterback, and he and I had just really bonded in football. And he's like, "Hey man, why don't you?" I was an offensive lineman. He didn't know anything about offensive line. He's like, "Hey, why don't you come coach our O line?" And I said, "Great, super." And we had a blast, and it was a lot of fun. And um, we just really enjoyed it from there. And from those experiences, he and I got closer. He really wanted to be a coach. That was something his passion. He wants to be a coach. He is a coach now. He's a high school head football coach. Pumped for him and that journey. But he really did help light that fire for me. We actually, believe it or not, a lot of what spurred our interest in it was the NCAA football series on Xbox.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we played that a ridiculous amount. And so it was coaching, and he did a lot more of the plays and the stuff like that. I did a lot more of the recruiting, that stuff, the player personnel type decisions.
Wait,
And
so you had a Xbox coaching staff for this game?
we did,
I
we
love it.
did.
I love it.
Um, and when we weren't doing that, we were at odds trying to figure out which was the better way to go. Like, if someone's not as good at the play calls, but they're really good at recruiting versus someone not so good at recruiting and they're really good at the play calls, which one won out? And honestly, it was recruiting. Recruiting won out. I had better athletes, and if you just throw it deep with fast kids on the video game, they score touchdowns.
That's a good.
So,
That was a good caveat on the video game. That might work out exactly. That's
so
interesting. Well, that's interesting, Adam. That I'm gonna call it an unofficial coaching gig. That's what Powder Puff is. By the way,
yeah,
I'm shocked we're still allowed to call it Powder Puff. To be real frank with you, instead of
that's fair.
women's flag football. I also did that. We had just the junior and senior years and loved it. I don't know that it like sparked something in me at that point. I did go on to coach, but that's interesting that kind of coaching was like, or that kind of role was like, oh, wait a minute, like this is Like, okay, I can kind of like this is what the guys do to me. My football coaches. I'm
Yeah.
kind of digging this, right? So, where did that flame go in regards to college and what you studied, and what's that next part look like?
So it was a huge part in me deciding where I was going to go to college. We were from middle of nowhere, Ohio, South Central, just where there's just nothing. And we both were interested in going to a much bigger city. So we looked at different schools. He was going to go play football at Mount St. Joseph, which is in Cincinnati, and I had lots of family ties. And then one of the better basketball players we've ever had at our college or at our high school went to Xavier University, and so I had a lot of interest in there. Went there, and one of the things that really sealed the deal for me was Xavier had a club football team, and they were going to let me come on and do some coaching right off the bat, and that really made it sealed the deal. They also had a pretty good sport management department, so that really led me into coaching at it's a club level, but and then also getting into sport management. So that's where that led me.
Yeah, I was surprised you said when you said the club sport of football. I thought, oh yeah, you get a chance to continue playing. By the way, mad respect, offensive lineman. That was my role in high school as well.
Yes, sir.
The best position on the football team. I don't care what Tom Brady says or his paycheck. It's the offensive line that gets it done. But I was surprised you said, because when you said that the club football, I was like, oh yeah, well, you went to play, but you said coach. So
Yeah.
you really did go start diving in, like, okay, this is what I'm going to be. Now, this is interesting. I can't wait to figure this part out, because we all know this is a track podcast. We haven't mentioned track yet. We're talking all football here. So keep us going through that journey. You're coaching club football, you're majoring in sports management. So you want to, at this point, do you want to be a coach, or are you still, is that an option for a career?
That's my only thought at this current time when I'm a freshman is I'm going to be a coach. And a lot of the reason why I didn't go to play, you can't tell because I'm sitting down right now, but I'm only about 5'8", and 5'8" offensive lineman. There's not many calls for that. So I knew that I was going to have to switch to coaching quick. And that's what I did. And when I got there, I thought, okay, great, I'm going to be coaching. But if I'm honest, I didn't have the confidence level to be a coach especially of people older than me. And on a
Mm-hmm.
club team, I don't know if you know, but there's master's level students, like athletes who've been playing for 4 years in college, and then they come to get their master's and then they play. We had some 32, 33-year-olds on this club football team. And me as a 19-year-old kid trying to coach, my confidence just wasn't there yet.
Sure.
And what happened is I kind of got pushed into a manager role, which I don't think got pushed is probably the best way to say it, but I kind of just fell into that spot. And I loved it. I loved being around it. I loved doing everything. We had to go to cool places and do cool things. And we were actually fairly successful. And kind of got away from it after that because I was like, I really don't want to be a manager. I want to be a coach. But as things started to unfold, I really started to see that it was recruiting that I enjoyed. I did a little bit of being a recruiting coordinator for the club football team before I kind of switched and went and did an internship at the University of Cincinnati with their recruiting department, which was really cool. I did that for a little while, and then my best friend comes back into play. We moved into an apartment together, and he got me a recruiting intern position at Mount St. Joe, and that kind of grew over time. And what really picked it up and put it where it was going was when I met my first real mentor. His name's Greg Huster. Greg Huster, been a football coach for a long time. He was the director of recruiting at the University of Cincinnati, but he graduated from Mount St. Joe, and he came back to be the assistant head coach, as well as the recruiting coordinator and all that. And I had already accepted a small stipend position at their rival, which was Thomas More. And so it was a house divided. My buddy went to Mount St. Joe, and I worked at Thomas More, and I did that for about 3 weeks. And they convinced me to come over to Mount St. Joe to the light side. And um, it was the best decision I ever made because my mentor, Greg Huster, he just knew so much, and he taught me so much, and he balanced me out. He was just so not afraid of anything, just wild and crazy, do whatever it took to be successful. And I'm just this shy kid trying to figure out life. He really brought me out of my, comfort zone, and taught me a lot. And then as we got more and more, we had some high school coaches that couldn't be there during the day. So they said, hey, we need you to help with this. We need you to help with this. We need you to help with this. So I started coaching again, where I coached quarterbacks for a little while. I coached wide receivers for a little bit. Just doing different positions, just helping out with the high school coaches that were teaching all day. We had meetings before they would get there. So I would run the meetings and then we'd go out to practice. And I did that for about 3 years, loved it. And I just really wanted to be full-time in athletics. I wanted that more than I wanted anything. And it just wasn't happening.
Well, let
So
me pause you there, because you said something kind of contradictory, at least in my mind. So from Xbox up until today, like recruiting as a kind of a theme you're going with here, right? I mean, you recruited for the club football team there. On the Xbox, you were the recruiter. The other guy was the play caller, etc. But you then said that your mentor there, Greg Huster, pronounce his last name, Huster, helped you get out of your you break out of your shell that you were the shy guy. Now that to me doesn't balance being a recruiter, meaning I've got to talk to strangers, right? I mean, that's if we boil down recruiting 101, that's what we're doing. We're talking to young strangers, right? And trying to establish a relationship and learn who they are all in this very short amount of time, but yet shy. How did, where does this recruiting come from? On one hand, I want to say, were you the kid that, riled up the neighborhood kids to, play baseball games and things like that? But that's not the shy kid that's doing that either. So help me understand those two kind of contradictory parts there.
Yeah, actually the real place where that started is we had a 3-on-3 street basketball tournament that was like a really big deal for our area. It was not just in our area, but pretty much all over Southeast Ohio. It was called Gus Macker. Gus Macker, I love Gus Macker. It was what we did over the summer. We were a basketball town. We were never really that good at football, but we have one of the best high school coaches in Ohio history was there the entire time growing up. Through the time I graduated, he was our head basketball coach. And he also his wife was one of my mom's friends. And she was also my second grade teacher. So his son was 1 grade behind me in high school. We knew them well. And so basketball was just huge in our town. And basketball is really what was one of my first loves. But I am short and slow and really not that good. So I had to, if I wanted to be on a winning team, I had to recruit some of my friends, some of the best kids in the area to be on my team. So recruiting really comes from trying to find the best to be on the basketball team for the summer to play Gus Macker. We never really found that good of a team until the last year we did it. I finally got one of the varsity basketball players to come join us, and that was the best year we had. But growing up my whole life, I knew these people. We were in the same small town. We were in the same preschool, elementary, middle school, high school. We were together our whole lives. So that didn't really take a whole lot of, social skills. Just, we knew everybody. But a lot of my recruiting that I was doing was emails, text messages, kind of stuff behind the scenes. So that's where
Hey, Adam, your mic is dying down. I don't know if we want to maybe switch to the computer mic or something.
Hear me now?
Yeah, that sounds better. Yeah, you were it was fading out, and I'm afraid no one could hear you.
Okay, cool.
The last thing we kind of heard there was about the recruiting, was about the emails and things like that.
Yeah. So emails and text messages aren't really that scary. You can send those without having to be too brave or anything. But honestly, I loved recruiting so much. When I first started, I was trying my best to get out of that, comfort zone. And I was cold calling people, just trying to grow, trying to learn. And it was exciting. So it took some time to get used to, but I've developed this ability to be what I call on. And when I'm on, I can just go right now, I'm on. this isn't normal for me. This took a lot of mental preparation for me to do this interview. I struggle with anxiety, depression, things like that. So this wasn't easy for me, but I think it's such a blessing. I'm so honored to be on here that I knew I had to. But these are just the things that, if you knew me in my home life, completely different than when I'm at work.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're again, I just want to reiterate, so blessed that you'd be here. I mean, I know it's not, when we invite guests here, um, it's hard to get guests on the show. And what I mean by that is a lot of people, especially because of the profession we're in, we're coaches. We're not very me focused, right? We're very outwardly like, oh, here's my team. Look what they're doing. Like even on social media, when I'll say, congrats to on a PR to a coach, I tell you the most common response is, well, John or Jane did a great job. And it's like, yeah, that's cool and all, but someone had to direct them. They didn't you can't just show up to a meet and expect to get better at the shot or the hurdles without coaching, right? So, I mean, there is,
Yeah.
you're part of the process. You're not the outcome, but you are part of the process. So, I appreciate you being open and honest about, that level of, I'm gonna call it anxiety, being on the show. So I'm glad you're on, man. I'm proud of you.
Yes.
I'm proud
Yes,
of you.
sir.
Well, we'll circle back to recruiting because that was a big part of my life as a coach, and certainly in sales, there's a lot
Yep.
of parallels there as well. So we'll circle back to that. So let's keep advancing the journey. Where do we go next? By the way, we're the worst track podcast in the world. We haven't mentioned track yet, Adam. Where does I'm so anxious. Where does track come in? Maybe you pulled the wool over my eyes. Maybe you're not really a track coach, man. Come on, let's get to
I
this.
am. We still have another 3 years in my journey, but thankfully they're not too lengthy.
All right.
Um, so what happens? I'm trying to be full time. I want to be full time at Mount
Right.
St. Joe. I've applied for many jobs, didn't even get an interview at a place where I was a part time employee. That was really frustrating. But at the time, I was really young. I'll give him that. I was 23, 24 years old, applying for jobs that, and I'd been there for 3 years. So I'd been working there since, I was 2021. And so I actually completely blew up everything. This was one of the most defining moments of my life. As I said, this is crazy. I'm just gonna go get a full time job. And so I got a full time job, and it wasn't too long after that. I hated going to work every day. I loved the people I worked with. I didn't mind what I did, but it wasn't recruiting. It wasn't coaching. It wasn't what I wanted to do.
So this
And
was
I was
something
really,
outside of athletics.
yeah, I did.
Mhm.
I did data analytics for about 2 years.
Oh, I can't.
Um,
I don't think I can name a single coach that would be like, oh man, I wish I could do data analytics, data entry.
yeah,
Come on, sit me in front of a desk. That I would love that, right? Yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the proof of your DNA too, though, right? It's like,
yeah,
instead of being like,
for
oh yeah,
sure.
I didn't mind it, I could do it. It's like, no, 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 I could not do it. I love the people, didn't love the work. Yeah, okay,
And so I did that, and then so what really came, the really defining moment came when I just got frustrated. I was tired. I actually applied for and got a linebacking coach job at Ave Maria, and I was in Cincinnati at the time, and Ave Maria is in Florida, um, and I was like, perfect, let's go do this. I'd recruited Florida my entire time. So I was like, perfect. I get to be in Florida. And Ave Maria actually had specific scholarships for Ohio kids and Michigan kids. So I thought this was even more perfect. So I went to Ave Maria, and my parents actually had a condo that was only 15 minutes away from Ave Maria, so it was even better. And they happened to be there at their condo when I got the job, and I went there, toured. They showed me everything. We talked about it. I'd never coached linebackers before, so I was like, okay, like we'll figure it out. And ended up just having, I'm going to call it a borderline existential panic attack. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't. I spent the day, and they said, hey, go spend the night with your parents and just come back tomorrow. And we'll get started. And I couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't sleep. It
oh
was,
no.
I think, 5 a.m. Still hadn't slept. And I said, I can't. I have to tell him I can't do it.
What what was the major part of that? Was it location? Even though you had temporary parents 15 minutes away, right? They really lived back
Yeah.
home. So was it location? Was it uh, linebacker. I don't know much about coaching football. I played football,
Yeah.
but it feels like, and I'm going to have every football coach. I know we have football coach / track coaches listening to us. They're going to yell to quit tweeting already. I can feel you already hitting me up on Twitter to tell me how wrong I am. But it feels like I see a lot of coaches that'll bounce between positions. Like they'll go from the linebackers coach to the DBs, even maybe to the wide receivers coach, because a lot of football is route memorization. Now we think about that for receivers, but like I played offensive line. So my offensive line journey was I played all five. So I just knew, okay,
Yeah.
on this play I cut. If I'm playing right guard, I'm blocking down, et cetera, blah, 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 right? Receivers, obviously a lot of routes. Quarterbacks, of course, you got to know everybody and what they're doing. Linebackers, same thing. It's eyes on the ball and, technique. There's not a lot of technique, though, at least where I was coached. Maybe that's why I didn't go any further with football. So what was it? Was it location? Was it coaching a new position? All of it combined?
Yeah, I think it was all of it. And I'm not, the last thing I want to do is talk bad about anything, but Ave Maria is a very unique place. It was a planned Catholic community. So there was nothing. And then they built this college, university, and then they built a Catholic community around it. So everything was based around this Catholic, beautiful, gorgeous cathedral that, fit 1,100 people in it. But as they were building it so fast, and just like Florida grows, there were just so many empty houses that were waiting to be, like, it wasn't a full community yet. It was still brand new, and it just felt really kind of like, it reminded me of like when you watch Edward Scissorhands and they show the community and they're just all these just houses that are just, everything's the same and everybody does the same thing. And it just, I don't know, it kind of felt just uncomfortable for me because I'm not Catholic myself. And coaching a position, after we did about an hour of film study, and instead of feeling better, I felt worse. And it just got so far from my comfort zone that I couldn't. So I had to, and at this point I had quit my job at Mount St. Joe, which I was doing part-time. I'd quit my full-time job and took this. So I'm sitting in Florida without a job, and I'm just like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So I called Mount St. Joe back, and I was like, I'll just do that. And they said, well, we already gave your job away. It'd been 2 days. And I was like, okay, cool. I get it. So then I was like, well, now I don't have a job. So then I was like, well, I better go get my full-time job back. And thankfully my boss was one of the most wonderful people I've ever encountered. And he, honestly, he was scrambling. He didn't know what he was going to do without me. So he was pumped to have me back, but I felt so lucky that he gave me the job back. And then after we got back, we had a much more transparent conversation about what my actual goals were and what I wanted to do. So I kind of just disappeared on him overnight.
Was that the data analyst job?
Yeah.
So was there any, the Mount St. Joseph thing goes away, the Ave Maria thing doesn't happen for your reasons. Now you're back to just data analyst, and I don't mean just, but like there's no coaching anything right now. Any part of you at this point, you're like, you know what? Maybe I was just wrong. Maybe I'm not supposed to be in athletics. Maybe I'm supposed to be in the corporate world.
There was a lot of that. And at the time, it was never about the money. It was about my passion. So I was still doing Mount St. Joe stuff for free. I didn't care. It was what I wanted to do with my life. And one of the athletes I recruited at Mount St. Joe, his dad, former NFL player for the Bengals. He was an All-Pro 1 year. He's David Fulcher. He is the second best player to play with other than Bo Jackson on Tecmo Bowl. That's one of his major claim to fame.
If you'd have said anybody but Bo Jackson's number one, we would have just stopped the interview right here, man. Because I'd be like, well, Adam, you clearly don't know anything. Because
he was the best defensive player to play with.
Bo Jackson was easily number one. Yeah. Okay, good. All right.
And so he was starting a brand new football team at Cincinnati Christian University. So it was going to start from scratch. And what do you need when you start from scratch? Recruiting.
Yeah, right.
So I was pumped. And he said, I've got a stipend. I'd love to hire you. And so we did that for a little while. I recruited the first class there, which was an exciting adventure. We went from nobody to 117 kids in 1 year, which was a huge adventure. And then the dark years come. I after that, they did hire me full time after that, as kind of an athletic recruiting coordinator for the entire athletic department. And I was able to leave my data analyst job, which was really awesome. And then we started losing, and losing and losing. And we had back-to-back games at one point where we lost 73-0, 84-0. Um, and it was just tough. Well, we went 0-22. The team actually ended up going like 0-33 for the first 3 seasons. But I was used to, at Mount St. Joe, we went from 4-6 to 5-5 to 6-4 to 8-2. So we were rolling. We were doing things that, getting Mount St. Joe back to where they were. So I'm used to a staff that, knows exactly what they're doing, how to do it. Everybody's been in college football for a while. Everything rolls. And we had a bunch of first-time college coaches as our head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. None of them had any college experience. In fact, their experience was at the smallest level of high school. So we just didn't have as much experience as I would like, and things weren't going the way I wanted it to go. And I was trying so hard to do things that I was used to doing and how things were supposed to go. I got frustrated and I was ready to be done. I just said, I'm going to have to go somewhere else, do something else. And this is where we actually get to talk about something in the track room. So
I'm waiting. I'm excited. I'm on pins and needles here.
I'm ready to be done. And God opened a door. Our cross country coach came in and quit. And I was ready to quit.
Cincinnati Christian?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I said to our athletic director, I said, let me do that. Let me do it. Please let me do it.
Well, okay, hold on. Why? Nowhere did I hear you ran cross country in high school.
Nope.
You were a football coach, but you secretly loved the marathon. I mean, nothing here. What in the world?
At the time, cross country only had 2 kids on the team.
Yeah, okay, wait a
one
minute.
guy,
So
one girl.
You were frustrated with the 0-22 and 0-0 everything. It ain't like you're taking over cross country and they're good, right? I mean, obviously they don't have 2 kids. I mean, what is going on here?
I said to them, I said, well, so I got football up and running. We're successful there. We were a poor school that we needed athletic enrollment, and we just didn't have it, especially in cross country. We were looking at getting rid of our cross country program. And not to lie, it came with a pretty nice pay increase as well.
But the cross country position?
Yeah.
Oh, that might be a first. I don't think I've ever heard of a football coach going to coach cross country and there was a bump.
So I became a head coach from where I was kind of an athletic department person. Now I'm a head coach.
So just cross country, or did you have track?
We just had cross country.
So let me ask you this as well, because this feels a little haphazard. And trust me, Adam, there's no judgment here. But it feels haphazard that the cross country coach quit, and you're like, hey, look at me.
It was haphazard.
If the bowling coach would have walked in and said, I'm quitting, would you? Would you be a bowling coach right now?
To be fair, maybe.
Okay, I appreciate that honesty. Yeah.
But I will be honest and say, when I was recruiting, a lot of what I looked for is I was always creative in trying to find, the fastest 100-meter guys in the nation, in the region. Like, I was always, I mentioned it before, you have fast guys, you throw the ball on Xbox, they score. I was always infatuated with speed.
So so there's some component of track.
Yeah.
There, football, right? Sure.
Mm-hmm. And I had wanted to be the track coach at Mount St. Joe because, again, everybody is enrollment driven, and the track team was really small at Mount St. Joe, and I was like, I could do that. I could fill a team, no problem. Like, I may not know how to coach it, but if I have a guy that runs a 10-9 versus somebody who's out here, you recruit somebody who runs at 11-5, I don't have to coach him at all. My guy's going to win. Just like athletic ability alone, we're going to be better, is what my perspective always was.
And since you're mentioning Mount St. Joseph and track coach, shout out to Tina Blakely, the head coach of Mount St. Joe. Love her.
She was there when I was there.
Yeah, man, they're awesome. We just shout out to them. That program, love their new facility they got. They did an amazing job.
Beautiful facility.
Yeah, they did an amazing job. Absolutely. So what do? You are a football coach turned cross country coach. I'm going out on a limb and say you didn't know anything, meaning how to actually coach cross country. You know how to
Yep.
recruit. That's put that to the side. I feel like you could have recruited for a Tiddlywinks team all the way up to the football team, right? So that seems pretty established here. So what did you do educational wise for the actual coaching?
So that's where I just started diving in with everybody I knew and who had any type of connection. I just started asking questions and learning. And the last thing I want to do is make it sound like cross country is simple, but I will say that every person I spoke to said, if you had to pick a sport that you didn't know much about, cross country doesn't have very many variables.
Stop tweeting right now, cross country coaches.
That's what they told me.
Actually, let's start this. Adam, what's your Twitter handle? I should have had that ready. What's your Twitter handle?
At Coco Nation.
All right, COKO Nation. Yep. All one word, no underscores and all that, right?
Yep.
Okay. Look, hearing what he said, because I'll actually let's not challenge you. I'll say I'm with you on this, and what I mean by that is, so I used to teach level 1s for USATF. Did 30, 40, 50 of them. Loved them. Had a great time. Never did the distance part, of course, but I used to make a lot of distance coaches mad because I'd say, oh, distance coaching is easy on the surface level, meaning I'll just make a bunch of high school kids run 100 miles per week. I'm exaggerating here, just tad a little bit, but I'll make them 100 miles a week. I was like, and they'll run 10 flat for the 2 mile. I was like, I honestly feel like I could have a pretty decent cross-country 2-mile team with that way. Now, getting past 10 minutes, getting to run 9:30 and 9:15 and 9 flat. I just saw this amazing race at the Drake Relays. These 2 high school boys run sub-9. They're like the number 2 and 3 ever time now in Iowa. And I'm not a distance guy, but I was like, man, these guys are running, and they ran sub-9. I could absolutely not do that. That is where the art of coaching is. But I am with you. It's like, yeah, if you don't know a lot about cross-country, you can still screw it up by making them run too much. I'm with you. I'm not saying it's the easiest. I'm just saying you make them run a lot, their aerobically will get better. And that's the name of a game for a poor 5K kid. You got to get the aerobic side better. That's interesting. Okay, so but I love that. So you started calling around. Did you do any clinics or I hesitate to say books or videos, but books? There's a lot of great distance coaching books and things like that. Anything like that?
Daniels running formula, I think is what it's called.
Boom! I think that automatically makes you a cross country coach if you read Daniels. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's in every. I almost guarantee. I'll almost place a bet on this. I do think that book is probably in every distant coach's library for sure.
Yes.
Good.
So I had a good mentor who he was one of the most successful high school coaches in our area. He happened to teach with my uncle at Mason High School in Cincinnati. So, I had some good people telling me, and then I was really fortunate because my athletic director didn't just really throw me to the wolves. We had a coach in between. So the coach that quit wasn't the coach that we had for multiple years before that. And the coach that had quit before that didn't want to do it anymore because he couldn't handle the recruiting part of it. He was also he was a civil engineer in Northern Kentucky. He just didn't have the time to dedicate to the recruiting, but he could do absolutely the training plan. And they let me team up with him. And he just loved coaching.
Yeah.
And he taught me tons, and he was the nicest human. Love him. Matt Van Doren. He ran at the University of Cincinnati. One of the best humans I've ever encountered. And he was a good Christian. He was great for our kids across the board. And so he did a lot of the coaching. He kind of taught me some stuff and helped me learn and helped me grow. And that was really the moment where I was like, I think this is going to work out just fine.
I think that's quite common. The skill set to coach, whether it's distance, throws, sprints, doesn't matter. Maybe football. I don't know. Maybe the skill set of coaching the offensive line is different than the skill set of recruiting. Now, sometimes that's because we put this big, scary cap on recruiting when really recruiting at its core is making friends. Now it's weird because you're making friends with younger 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, etc. But you're trying to establish relationship. That's what friendship is, right? Establishing relationship. But we put this big scary of like, oh, I've got to I don't know what I've got to make sure this kid thinks that everything is perfect. And it's like, man, first of all, no place or person is perfect. It's more about that relationship side. So I think that tell me his name again.
Matt
The
Van
Yeah,
Doren.
Matt Van Dorn probably was a great coach, X's and O's, and how to
He
make a kid
was.
go. Could
He is.
coach me out of the box, right? He'd be able to coach those 9 flat kids. But on the recruiting side, it's like, that's a skill. And again, we're not perfect people, so maybe he just didn't have that skill. Yeah, I have a
Yep.
lot of respect for that. I have more respect for someone who can admit that and say that versus, oh, yeah, no, I can recruit. It's like, well, you got 2 kids on the team, so yeah. And then the added pressure on top of, he had if he's a civil engineer, that's
Yeah,
80 hours a week, just on that.
for sure.
So how'd that go? How'd that process work out for you?
Um, so it went well. We were able to scrounge together some former athletes. um, brought in some new recruits that year. What I really learned though through the process, and this is kind of what I took to our athletic director and our administration, was kids don't want to just run cross country; they want to run track. So we were having a lot of trouble finding student athletes that were interested in just running cross country. So it was after our first season. We didn't get last place, which I thought was awesome. We didn't get last place in conference, so I was super pumped about that. And we had five. We had five finish at conference, both on men and women.
Wow.
So that was something we hadn't done the previous year. And we weren't last. We were 11th out of 12, but we weren't last. And so after the season, that's where I really found out, like, we're going to need to consider adding track. I was really lucky. They moved me to assistant athletic director shortly after the season. And my first thing I said after they named me that was, we need to add a track team. And I will gladly run it. I will gladly do it. I started looking up different ways that track programs were set up, and I started noticing there were directors of track and field. And I was like, okay, that might work for us. Like, I could be the director, do all the heavy lifting. And then we're in Cincinnati. There are tons of coaches. There are tons of people, I can't believe I wouldn't be able to find some people who could coach. And so finally I had brought it to them before I was assistant AD. They said no. Once it became assistant AD, they were like, okay, yeah, do it. So they committed to hiring me a sprints coach, jumps coach, throws coach, and distance coach on top of the cross country coach I had.
Wow,
So
man.
they invested money into it. And again, we were enrollment driven. And I was telling them, like, I think I can have 100 kids, go from, a small cross country team to 100.
How big is the school at that point?
Um,
Like roughly,
like 500 kids, maybe.
yeah, wow. And so you're telling them, hey, I can up your enrollment by
Yeah.
20%. Wow. So yeah, they're listening.
Yes. And they were. And so we hired some people, and it was great. Started recruiting. The first recruiting cycle went awesome. I think I brought in 95 for the fall. That was including the, 10 or so that we had for cross country. So I brought in like 85 new kids, and we just started running track. We didn't have a track on campus. We actually had to go use a public track that was about 10 minutes away,
Mhm.
which in the NAI I'm learning is very common now. I didn't know at the time it wasn't super common, or it was super common, but we hit the ground running. That year cross country, so the second year cross country moved from 11th out of 12 on the men's side to, we moved up to 6 out of 12 on the men's side. So we had gotten much better, brought in a really good recruiting class. The women's side, I think, moved up to 10th, and actually had some genuine cross country runners. And then we moved into indoor season. At indoor conference, we got third and third in the conference on men's and women's, which we were really excited about. We were a Christian college, so we were in the NCCAA. We had several different All-Americans, and I think we had a couple national champions in the Christian college world.
How did you, building a team from scratch with no facility, having to borrow,
Yeah.
did you, and knowing that you're enrollment driven, and that's I don't know if I want to use the word sadly here, but that's common. When I coached JUCO,
Yeah.
I could have won the national championship with 10 kids and I would have gotten fired. It was you need
Yeah.
100 kids, right? It's we called it butts and beds
Yep.
at that point, right?
Yep.
Now I wasn't building from scratch, almost was at JUCO, but you are building from scratch. I mean, there was no team, there's no
Yeah.
establishment there, there's no school records, any history, culture, etc. Did you focus on any specific groups, or did you just say, "Hey, man, I don't care what you throw, jump, sprint, I will take every event that's
Yep.
out there"?
And that's still how I do it today, even is through the whole time is I want people who are interested in coming here. And if thankfully it really doesn't end up being as, one-sided as you might think, they really do just come in all shapes and sizes and forms when you reach out the right way through coaches, social media, NCSA, all the different ways to reach out to people. You just get just such a beautiful blend of everything. And it really does just kind of work out. But yeah, we had every event group, and
Did you
it was
struggle
great.
with any event group? Like, yeah, I could only get one throw, or even on sex, did you have a struggle
Yeah.
getting female versus male, or vice versa?
Yeah, the women's area is always going to be more difficult. I think there are significantly more opportunities for women in the track and field cross country world at the Division I level than there are for men because of Title IX football
Hmm.
differences. And that's one of the big things here at Brewton-Parker that we run into. There's a huge disparity because we have Georgia Southern, which is about an hour 15 from us. They don't have a men's team, and Georgia State doesn't have a men's team.
Mm-hmm.
So if those two had men's teams, I think we'd struggle a lot more than what we do to get men's track athletes. Um, but we don't have a big women's team here, and I didn't have a big women's team there. With that said, because we had so much talent on the women's side at Cincinnati Christian, at Christian College Nationals we took fourth, and we were just all freshmen. Every single one of them was freshmen.
Wow.
And we took fourth place at Christian College Nationals out of, I don't know, probably 25 or 30 teams.
Wow.
So that was really cool. And that was indoor season. Excuse me. So then moving into outdoor season, I had no idea what to expect. I was watching our 800 runners run like, I think our best 800 runner in indoor was running like a 211. And I was like, that's not even kind of competitive. Like, what are we like? We're just not going to be good on the distance side. It's kind of just sighed and said, well, we tried. And then come into outdoor season and they set it on fire. They distance really started to shine. And the really exciting thing that happened that really said, like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life was when we got to outdoor season at conference. Our men's team was like projected to be top 3 again. And the way it all unfolded, we were at the last event, which was discus. If our guy got 4th, we won. If he got 5th, we were going to get 2nd. Or I guess if he got 3rd, we would for sure win. If he got 4th, is what it was. We were going to lose. And he was 3rd going into finals and dropped down to 5th, and we lost by 1 point.
Oh,
So we were runner up by 1 point.
I was really excited for the Cinderella story. That just gutted
Yeah,
me. Oh,
with all freshmen, every
yeah,
single
right.
person freshman.
Yeah,
We didn't have any of the people coaching really weren't college coaches.
right.
We had a bunch of high school coaches who this was their first time coaching college. We had me, my first time with a track team.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you get away with that. And what I mean by
So
that is, so to me, one of the most evil words in the dictionary is the word just, because it brings you down. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had coaches tell me, well, I'm just a high school coach. I'm like, whoa, first of all, you're not just a high school coach. You are a high school. That's a very important
yeah,
position. So when you talk about, because you kind of made a delineation there between a college coach versus a high, like we really didn't have a bunch of college coaches. We had just a bunch of high school coaches. First of all, you're coaching in college, so they were college coaches. Second of all,
for sure.
I don't think there's this mysticism just because you have a university behind your institution's name versus high school that you're. That's where we get into the fallacy of when you start coaching college. Oh, well, you must know a lot now because you coach college. And it's like, man, there's
That's
plenty
a
of
fair
college
point.
coaches that don't know anything. I shouldn't say know anything, but don't know very much about their positions because they just don't pour time and attention into studying and becoming better. And there's high school coaches that are awesome. I mean, like really stinking awesome at their event and their craft. So I'm gonna Give you
I
the
think I
finger
was
wag a
going for a
little.
little bit more,
Uh,
trying to make it seem bigger than what it was.
yeah, well, certainly. Well, hey, I tell you, you don't need to because first year program.
Yeah.
Bravo! If you'd have gotten 20th out of 25th at the indoor CCC, I'm like, oh my, that's awesome, man. There's 5 other teams that have probably been around a lot longer than you, and you just came up in there and beat them, right? So I love that. And all freshmen, we all know freshmen, first
Yes.
year of college. Come
Yes.
on, man. It's a crapshoot as it is anyway. So to do that with all freshmen, that's you don't make it. You don't need to make it bigger than it is because it already is big. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how many years did you stay at Christian College University?
I was there. Well, so that's where even more intrigue happens. And not to plug, excuse me, not to plug too hard, but I also won Coach of the Year that year,
Yeah,
which was really
you
exciting.
should absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which was that was I thought that was the most validation for how important recruiting is,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really awesome. And it really,
So were you not coaching any event? You're being a true director.
I was true director, just making sure that a lot of what I was doing was making sure the academics were going well, handling any discipline issues. I was doing almost, I would say 95, if not more percent of the recruiting. I was also assistant athletic director. So I was doing
Mm-hmm.
different things for the department,
Yeah.
serving in all those ways. So just trying to make sure our students were taken care of, loved and
Yeah.
supported. I was the only full-time person on our staff.
Right.
We
Yeah.
didn't have anybody, everybody else was part-time.
Yeah, no need to defend. I think there is
Yeah.
might possibly be a bigger place for us in college track and field of a directorship where they don't coach or they coach in a advisory capacity. I'm thinking about the coach at Virginia Tech, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when I visited him, he was like, "Yeah, I was a decathlete, things like that." I'm like, "Oh," so I was like, "What position do you coach here for track?" Because decathletes, you can coach anything, right? And he was like, "Oh yeah, I don't coach." And I was like, wait a minute, what? And if you know anything about Virginia Tech, wildly successful, ACC champs
Very.
all the time, many All-Americans every year, et cetera. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I make sure that my coaches have what they need to coach, to do their
Yep.
job. So I take care of all the paperwork side, all the fundraising, all the other stuff. And I might go to the long jump coach if they're struggling with something and say, hey, yeah, have you thought about this? Maybe try this, et cetera. So, and a lot of those roles we sometimes push over to a director of operations, so scheduling and
Yeah.
budgeting, things like that, where we need a more professional side of it with the head coach, but that head coach is super busy getting in the circle, helping all their throwers and things like that. So I think the role of a director that's a non-coaching role or non-majority of coaching is I think there may be something there for our college programs from Power 5 through NAIA JUCO even,
Yeah.
depending on, obviously there's budget concerns of how many coaches you can have and salaries, et cetera. But I think that's an important role. And you're right, on top of your assistant athletic director, which means you have duties in other sports and the athletic department in school as a whole. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that.
So the next part is, again, crazy, but it is what it is. So we had tons of success, had an amazing recruiting class coming in for the following year. I was like, we are for sure going to win conference. I was pumped, excited. We had brought in, we kind of filtered through a couple different coaches. I was really excited. The new coaches that we had brought in, I thought were just as good, maybe even better than what we had last year. We kept the coaches who I thought were really a strong part of what our success was. Also, we had the runner-up in triple jump that year at nationals, an outdoor season, which was really cool. We scored 8 points, so we finished, I think, 33rd in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all on the men's side. And then running into next year, we recruited some phenomenal athletes, including, I think he was the number 7 long jumper in the nation, as well as somebody who would go on to win 3 national titles in high jump in the NAIA.
Wow.
And we kept all of our really, really, really talented athletes. We kept those. So rolling into the next year, we were excited. I was like, I just need one more year. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really like CCU that much. I was ready to go on and do something different. I needed one more year, and I really felt like my resume would be good enough that, it wasn't a fluke.
Mm-hmm.
We did it, and it meant something. And then things just got worse, and they got worse, and they got worse. and I started applying for lots of jobs, and I knew the end was going to be near for what was going to happen at CCU. Um, and this part is the what I will call D-Day. As I had an interview with Alcorn State to be their head coach, and I was super pumped. I was like, this is an opportunity. One of our women's basketball coach, his mentor was the athletic director at Alcorn State, and he had gotten me an interview for the position, and I was really excited. I was interviewing for a D1 job, and I went in to say, we had a meeting. We had everybody, an all staff faculty meeting that day was called. And I went into my AD. I said, I won't be at the meeting. He goes, you really need to be at this meeting. And I said, well, I'm letting you know, like I have an interview for a D1 job, so I'm not going to be able to be there. He said, well, that's probably about as good a reason as I can think of not to come to this meeting. I said, okay, cool. So I go home and I have this phone interview. And in the middle of this phone interview, my phone is going off. I'm getting text messages. I'm getting phone calls. Not to mention the question that I knew I wasn't getting the job because he asked me about APR, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even know it existed. So when he asked me about that, and that's so critical to all D1 schools, and it was really a foundation of kind of what they needed was somebody who was going to do a great job in that way, making sure they retained and kept people eligible and graduated. So I didn't know anything about it at the time because I didn't know anything about D1 track. Right. And so I got off the phone. I was like, well, I bombed that. That's not fun. And then I answered the phone call. I'm like, what's going on? The school's closing. And I said, what? And they're like, yeah, the school's closing. You need to get here now. We just got told, like our CFO just told us, like, the school's closing at the end of the semester.
Not we're dropping a sport. Not no. You got fired.
Nope.
The school is closing.
Yes. And this was the semester before COVID.
Wow.
So this was fall 2019.
Not many schools fold.
No, not many do.
Wow.
So that was on, I think, October 29th, 2019. And so I was like, well, I'm definitely not getting that job that I just interviewed for. And then I show up and I'm just like, well, now what?
Was the school supposed to close like the end of that semester, or was it going to go through the spring semester? Okay, so there's not like
the end of the semester.
Okay, I get to roll for the year. It's like, oh yeah, this is D-Day.
And so we're in the middle of cross country. Well, not in the middle. We're almost at the end of cross country season at that point, right? And our men's cross country team is looking really good. We brought in a freshman who had never ran cross country before, and he was our best runner. Turned out phenomenal. And so we are maybe 5 days from going to conference. And once they found out we were closing, the conference said, you can't come to conference.
Really?
So we didn't even get to send our team to conference.
What was the reasoning there? I don't understand that. There's not
because we weren't going to exist. They felt like it was pointless for us to be able to run in conference.
Okay, I don't agree with that one. Okay.
I didn't either.
Yeah, of course.
Especially because the weekend before we found out, we had went to Asbury, and they were based on rankings, they were going to be third in conference, and we beat them on their home course, head to head. We beat them. And I was really excited. I was like, we might finish top, like third in the conference this year. And going from 11th, going from 2 kids on the team to 11th to 6th to 3rd, I was really proud of us.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get to go to conference, and I was really pretty confident looking at the results that we would have finished 3rd. Thankfully, the NCCAA let us go to Christian College Nationals for cross country.
Oh, good.
But CCU wasn't going to pay for us to go, so the kids had to go themselves, and they took a caravan, and they actually stayed at another local Christian college. They stayed in a dorm. They let them stay. It was awesome. They went and had a great time, so it was phenomenal. So now I switch from I'm recruiting athletes to come here to now I have to get all these athletes new homes. Because at this point, I had a new recruiting class. We had like 105 kids on the team. So I had to find homes for all these people. And hundreds of emails coming into me
Mm.
from other colleges, like saying, "Hey, who you got? How can I?" And not that I was upset, because I'd been there too with other college closing down. When you're a small enrollment driven institution and a school closes, you got to reach out and at least try. So what was really neat is we took kids that only had one offer from us, and I'm not exaggerating. They had 50 offers
Mm.
coming from Cincinnati Christian.
Wow.
So I made sure everybody was taken care of. I set it all up. I set a Google sheet. I sent it to any coach who wanted it. Here's all their information. Please recruit them. Please offer them. People are saying, "Can we get a release?" I said, "We're not going to be here after this semester. You don't need a release. Please recruit my athletes. They need a place to be next semester."
That's funny.
Doing everything I can. Like, don't wait. Like, recruit them now. Please offer them. Get them someplace safe for next semester where they're going to be able to continue. And so I had figured out most of what I was going to do from there with the kid, or most of what the kids were going to do from there. And then once that was all taken care of, I really started focusing on, okay, so what's next for me?
Yeah.
Can I justify continuing a track career? Is somebody willing to hire me in the same capacity that I'm in now? This position doesn't exist generally.
Right.
This is not a common thing at small schools for me to just do recruiting. And I was really thankful that a few colleges reached out over social media or email or whatever. And North Park University reached out to me there in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pumped. I said, great, another big city. It was a D3 school. They had awesome facilities. They showed me several things that they got because of the Chicago Bears. I was like, this is cool. And I went, interviewed. Really, I thought this was great. This is where I'm going to work. This is going to be phenomenal. And they kind of said, they got in the weeds where they were going to host a regional soccer match because their soccer team was doing really well. So they kind of got in the weeds during the recruiting process with me. And I said, hey, we're going to get back to you. We want to interview a couple more people, see what we want to do. And it took about a week before I heard back from them. And in that week, Brewton-Parker reached out to me. I talked for probably at least 4 or 5 hours with the vice president of athletics. They invited my wife and I to come down for a visit. And this was it's about 11 hours from where we were to Brewton-Parker. And it was the weekend after Thanksgiving. Got us a hotel, toured us around, talked to us, took us out to eat, loved us up, supported us, and really took care of my wife, which was really cool. And by the time we were done, I hadn't heard from North Park in a whole week. I didn't know what was going on, if they were offering me a job, if not. They seemed to like me. And Brewton-Parker was like, so, when are you going to start? We want you here. And I was like, well, let's do this. It felt great. I love Georgia. I had multiple kids on my team from Georgia, lots of kids on my team from Florida. So I wanted to come to the South where there was a lot more focus on track in the South than there was in Ohio. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And so we started getting plans ready to move to Georgia. And then I get a text message from the North Park AD, hey, can you call me? And I said, hey, I really appreciate you. I just want to let you know I've already accepted another position. And he's like, well, call me real quick. Let's talk. And he's like, we want to offer you the job. And I was like, okay. At this point, I kind of felt like I'd been pushed to the side for a little while and didn't really feel the same energy about it. And they had told me they were going to interview some other people, and they said, we didn't actually interview anybody else. We just want to hire you now. And I was like, oh, okay. And I said, well, I've already accepted this job. My wife and I are very comfortable. We're going there. And they didn't involve my wife in the process. North Park didn't. So, and I was like, okay. And they said, well, what are they offering you? And I told him, and he goes, Adam, we're going to offer you $20,000 more than that. And I was like, okay. I should probably pause and think about this. So I immediately called my wife and I'm like, hey, they're going to offer us this much more money. And she goes, I thought we were just going to Brewton-Parker. That's where I want to be. And I said, that's all you had to say. I love you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Called him back. I said, thank you. No, thank you. We're not going there. And then we started getting our life ready to go to Brewton-Parker. And oh man, best decision ever made was coming here. I love it here so much. So that was God saying, here's where you need to be. Here's what you need to be doing. Don't give up. And they really put me in a position to be in an identical space. You know, they even asked multiple times, like, are you a coach? And I was like, I mean, not really. I'm more of a director. I'm really good at recruiting. And so they put me in a position to do that and to be successful, and they've resourced me. And I think it was really important with such a unique space and a small school atmosphere that someone embraced that and encouraged it and fanned the flame instead of trying to make me something I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
They really just said, we want you to be the best version of what you are. And I thought that was really awesome.
And Brewton-Parker had an established track and cross country program.
Yes. Yes.
So are you? Stay with me here. Trust me, this works. Are
Okay.
you a Marvel guy at all? Marvel Cinematic Universe, Iron Man, Avengers
A
at
little
all?
bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so do you know Thanos snapped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. So they call that the blip, right? So these, half the population went away for 5 years, and then they came back, all that kind of stuff. Everybody knows it as the blip, right? So I
Yeah.
feel like, when we're interviewing coaches like yourself throughout the country, because we're talking about the fall of 19. So
Yeah.
we all know what happened in 2 months, 2.5 months
Yes,
later,
sir.
right? The coronavirus. I consider that the blip. It's like, all right, we all know
Yep.
it's shut down. We didn't have a season. So instead of going through that and talking about, well, what, gosh, you moved there, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
the
No
rugs,
question.
the rugs pulled out from
I'm
underneath
good with
feet
that.
and all that kind of sucks, right? So let's talk about Brewton-Parker College then.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in this. So they had an established program. It kind of sounds like, especially because it is rare, that the program was not set up like it is set up now with you in regards to
Correct.
a director and then a coaching staff. So that was a big leap of faith from the athletic director and the athletic
Yeah.
administration. So I love that I love how you put that. They let me be the best version of me, not trying to
They did.
mold
And
you
they
into
do.
something. Yeah. So talk to us about the program. You guys are being very successful. A lot of PR. I'm a big PR and school record guy
Yes,
on
sir.
social media. I love it. I love it in my very very being, and I get to celebrate your kids and your coaches on a weekly basis because a lot of success is happening. So talk to us about the program. Tell us about the school. How big is it? Where in Georgia is it located? Just kind of give us an overview of Brewton-Parker.
Yeah. So Brewton-Parker is a Southern Baptist institution. We're in AIA. We've got about 500, maybe 550 for the fall is what we're looking at, students that go here. We are located pretty square in the middle of nowhere. And I say that because we're directly between Macon and Savannah. It's about equidistance between Macon and Savannah, and we're just off Interstate 16. But then there's also two smaller but still decent sized towns, Dublin and Statesboro,
Oh
and
yeah.
we're
Oh.
directly between those two. So it's 45 minutes or hour 15 to Georgia Southern, about 45 minutes to Statesboro, about 45 minutes to Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
It's an hour and a half to Macon, hour and a half to Savannah. We're about 3 hours from Jacksonville, 3 hours from Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pretty well just out here in a very nice rural area where it's calm and beautiful.
And what is Brewton-Parker named after? Is that like two people who founded it,
Yes,
Mr.
there's
and Mr. Parker,
so
Mr. Bruton?
yes, absolutely, that's what it is. And
Okay.
and we started as a elementary school back in 1904
Wow.
for the community, and what was needed was there's two cities. Our college actually straddles two different towns.
Mm.
So half of the college is in Ailey, half of the college is in Mount Vernon, and it's actually split right down the middle by our main building, Gates Building, which is where the president is. He always makes the joke, if he goes to print something off, he's left Mount Vernon for the day and he's in Ailing now. So it's really neat. And so the two towns wanted to have a college, or wanted to have a school, and so they donated money to it. And it was, Brewton and Parker who donated. And then there's also Warren C. Crawley, who also donated some land to really make it all work. His name wasn't on everything. Ultimately, if I'm just being transparent, from what I've heard, is he was an African-American, and back at the time, he was donating land that he knew his children would never be able to utilize. And so we actually have one of our dorms areas, one of our dormitory areas is named after him and his contribution, because he doesn't get his name on the college. So he was a huge part of what he was, and he's like one of the missing pieces for the college's stories. Without his generous donation, we wouldn't be who we are, what we are. And we went from an elementary school, and we kind of just grew up with the kids who went through there. So we went from a middle school to a high school. And then once it was a high school for a little bit, we turned into a junior college. I'm not sure exactly when we turned from junior college to a 4-year institution, but I think it was around the late 80s. So we've only been a 4-year institution for, 30 years-ish, 35 years.
What's the popular majors like on your team?
I would say most of just your standard business, biology. We just added nursing. We just added exercise science. So those were some huge additions for us. We have education, criminal justice, psychology. The two that we just don't dive into is just the engineering, computer science space. We have basically every other general major that you'd be looking for.
And so being in the middle of nowhere, as you put it, I love that.
Yes, sir.
It's hard when you're doing that for recruiting two different ways, right? One is recruiting the student athletes, but also recruiting a staff. I mean, you've got a talented staff there that had options. Talk to us about your staff, how you got them to join you there in the middle of nowhere.
One of the things that I loved the most about being on this podcast is how many people that I've encountered that you've had on this show that I have tried to hire.
Oh, is that right?
So
this will be fun. I love this. Yeah.
So I have a list of, because a lot of who you talk to are big on Twitter, which again, you love Twitter. I love Twitter. I think that's a lot of who I know really well are the people who are big on Twitter. So Zontavious Johnson. Oh yeah. I tried to hire him before he got his head job. I tried to hire Coach Nile at Dillard before he got his head job. I talked to Auntie Throw Something about possibly working here. She's a little entrenched in the Dallas area, so I wasn't able to get that to work anything. Patty Hupp, who she's one that I tried to hire. Coach Redrick at Fort Scott, I didn't try to hire him, but he's actually someone who recommended somebody who actually worked here for me. And Nick Dodson actually worked here as a head coach before I was here. So there's just so many people that
awesome.
I know and I've tried to hire who've been on this show. And I think that's really interesting.
I'm just following you around, Adam. That's
right.
Why,
that's what it is.
Yeah, you just continue to give me your interview list, and that way I'll just bring them here to interview as well. So.
And the person who I hired initially when I first got here was Harvey Simpson. He's at Kaiser now, and I met him through social media. And our staff now, who I think is one of the most phenomenal coaches I've encountered in my, it's not really a long history of track, but Adrian Wilson. He was most recently at Nice High School coaching. He had some, top 10 athletes in this recruiting class. In the class of 2022, he coached one of the top distance runners who signed with Oregon, or one of the top hurdlers who signed with Penn State. He's done a phenomenal job at the high school level, and we were just really lucky that he was interested in coaching college, and convinced him to come over here to Mount Vernon, see what we had going on at Brewton-Parker. I think he liked the idea that I was going to resource him to be a coach. He wasn't going to have to do the recruiting. That's not quite what everyone's passionate about.
Yeah.
So that is the thing that I offer. I was just talking to a local high school coach and talking to her about possibly coming on and coaching on our staff. She was the head coach at Missouri Baptist uh, before her and her husband moved here. And one of the things she said is, I didn't like the recruiting thing. I didn't like it. It's not what I want to do. It was too much work. I didn't feel like I had enough time to monitor academics, deal with any discipline issues, do a good job in recruiting, while also having to come up with the workouts for multiple different intervention groups. So my goal is to take all that off their plates and say, do what you do best. And what I always say to all my recruits and anybody who hears me talk about this is, if we recruit a distance runner, I'm not going to have them out throwing shot put. So why would I have, my sprints coach trying to do anything that they're not passionate about, that's not what they're best at? Just like me, is I shouldn't be out there coaching. I'd be, fine, with some of the smaller technical pieces. If somebody's doing something wrong, I can correct it. If you're being coached by me, you're doing something very wrong. In terms of getting you to the elite status, getting all the really, really minor details, I shouldn't be out there doing that. That's what Adrian does. That's what my assistant coach, Xavier Kennedy, does. But I found Adrian through social media. We had a good talk. He liked it. And then I knew that I constantly need to be on the lookout for people. So I'm constantly trying to find anybody and everybody. And it was we were at a meet last year, and our starter for the meet was a young guy. And I could just tell he just was very professional. He handled himself amazingly for just being a young guy. And I said, did you compete? I just started talking to him and just like, did you compete? He went to Troy. And I said, have you ever thought about coaching in college? And he goes, yeah, I'd really like that. And so I asked him about it. And then, not a year later, but about 6 months after I met him, I was able to offer him a job, and he accepted it. And so now he's here working with us, and the growth that he's seen in the coaching realm with Adrian teaching him so much and growing, he's grown so much, and all of the athletes have had just tremendous success because of them. It's pretty awesome.
You didn't mention his name.
Xavier Kennedy.
Yeah, sounds like the smartest guy on your staff. Because he went to Troy University.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yes. Long history. You just, everybody, longtime listeners, you all know where I went to school, and my son's name is Troy. Yeah. So that guy's a genius. So, shout out to Xavier. I should have had him on the podcast, to be real frank with you.
Yeah.
Because he obviously chose the right
and you still
school.
can.
Yeah, exactly. Good call. Talk to us about, one of the things as we're going to start wrapping up here, Adam. But very unique. I love your story and your journey here, because it's you're guest number 150. I think we're on 156 today. So 156 coaches, and each one of those 156 coaches extremely unique journeys to where they are today. This might be one of the more unique journeys that we've had. I mean, half the podcast we talked about football, for crying out loud, and Xbox and things like that. But so I love that. But one of the unique things that you're going through now that most coaches will never go through, and if they do, they go through it once in their career, is you're getting a new facility at Brewton-Parker. And what I love about it is there's several things. One is, healthy things grow, so I love that you're getting a new facility. I love that Brewton-Parker they seem to be continue to stand behind their word of supporting you and supporting your program. Like that's great things for our sport. Talk to us a little bit about the new facility. You've learned so many new things.
Yes.
By getting a new facility that you never even thought of as a coach and as a director, right? So talk to us about that exciting project that's going on right now.
Yeah, so just the full story with that, when I first got here, they had talked about our track was one of the saddest things I'd ever seen when I first got here. We found out through lots of conversations, lots of research, that we had this, we had an oval, and it was an oval. So at least it was that, some schools don't even have that. So we were happy to have that, but they had actually put down a tennis surface. and tried to use it as a track surface, and it only lasted a year. The track team wasn't as, I don't know, established as, one of the successful programs here. So one of the only ways to get from the parking lot to the softball field was to drive on the track with trucks and cars and things.
What?
So people were driving on the track, and just, big hunks of track just coming right up off.
Lord.
It was an eyesore. It was not usable in any real way. It was dangerous, if I can be honest. Like, you put your foot down, you'd slip. And so they were talking about completely unearthing all of the asphalt, all of everything, and just making the soccer field bigger when I first got here. I said, hold on, I've got some plans. At least give me an asphalt base and we'll line it and it'll look nice. And I think that was something they invested initially for us, which was great. And my whole thought process was, eventually we're going to use this base and we're going to add a track program, because I'm going to recruit enough kids that we're going to make enough money that we're going to be able to do it. And I didn't think that was coming for another 2-3 years from now.
Right.
And what really spurred it was the athletic department was thinking about adding a new sport, whether it be women's lacrosse, maybe women's flag football. And after a lot of deliberation between our vice president of athletics and our president, what they decided was they were going to double down on track. And they were really going to give us the resources we needed to be successful. When I first got here, we had that bad track, and there was no track at the high school right across the street. But the high school got a brand new track in January of last year. And once they got a new track, then we were able to have a rubberized surface that we could use, and it wasn't dangerous for our athletes. So without that track, we would be out there on asphalt right now, just destroying our knees, ankles, all the joints. So the major issue that we have, the biggest benefit to all of this, is the high school wants to practice at the exact same time we do, and it's their track. So we have to wait till 5 o'clock before we can get on the track, and there's no lights. So early in the year, we have to try and figure out how are we going to get practice in a short amount of time before the sun goes down. And it was just really tough. We had to bring out like floodlights and trying to make it work and do the best we can with what we got. So when Brewton-Parker decided to add a track, it was awesome. We spent, probably 4 or 5 months really trying to get quotes and figure out how it was going to work. And they eventually just said, let's do it. And we did. And one of the huge things that we got was a throws area. So we've got a brand new hammer cage that's going to be put in. We didn't have anywhere on campus to throw at all. They actually threw right next to the chapel, hammer right next to the chapel.
Oh, Lord.
So there were times where kids said, I'm so used to not releasing it here so I don't hit the chapel, that when we were at meets, they wouldn't have the right release. So just little things like that. We added a steeplechase, which is huge because we have a women's qualifier in the steeplechase for nationals. So it's nice that we'll have our own steeplechase. And there wasn't a hammer cage or a steeplechase within an hour and a half of here. So we needed those things. So when they decided to add it, it was, I think it's about a $700,000 project all in. We had to lay out a new pole vault runway, new long jump, triple jump. We got 2 different pits at the end of one runway. We've got a javelin runway. Like I said, we added the hammer cage, and it's got its whole base there. And then we added a shot put area and the steeplechase. And then we added one of the unique things they did is they took the chute for the sprints, and then they kind of filled in that triangle between the chute and the oval, and they filled that in, and that's where our high jump's going to go. That ended up saving us a lot of money. And I think it's either into this week, like today, tomorrow, or the beginning of next week when our urethane gets here and they're going to start laying the rubber. And along with that comes, we get to buy a bunch of new equipment. So we're buying a high jump pit. We're buying all gill things, which we're really excited about because gill's
we are too, by the way. We really are excited. Yeah,
gill's the standard in our opinion, and we feel lucky that the school has allowed us to buy the best equipment. that's what I really feel blessed by. So we've got phenomenal hurdles coming with our logo on there, and everything that we're buying is top quality. And we're really excited that the school has invested in us that much that we're getting quality stuff. I think there's lots of things out there that you can get that may last 1 or 2 years, but we've been to so many different facilities where you can tell, this isn't quite new, but it still is phenomenal. And it always has Gil's name on it. So that's why it was important for us to go with it. Um, so we're pumped to have all the new equipment that we're getting. We're really excited about all of it and being able to do it not only on our campus, but when we want to, when it fits our schedule. Nobody's missing dinner because we have to wait till high school's done practicing. So it's just been such a blessing. I can't even begin to it still doesn't feel real. I go out there and I look at it and I'm just like, this is really awesome. The day that I think I'm just going to not believe it at all is when there's actual urethane down and I'm looking at it. And that day is coming in the next week or so. Probably by the time this actually gets released, I'm hoping there'll be full pour out there.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, I love it because it's the facility that you and your staff and your athletes deserve. I mean, it's always tough when you're sharing facilities and no facilities and things like that. I mean, to have an actual home,
Yes.
that's important, and it's really a testament to what you and your staff has done for recruiting. I mean, it's hard to recruit kids. They have a lot of options today, right?
Yeah.
And so to be able to recruit without a facility and to have the success you're having is phenomenal. I can't wait to see once you actually have your own facility and your guys are out there coaching their butts off and recruiting your butts off, that team's just going to explode, man. So I'm just super
That's what
excited
we're
for
hoping
that for
for.
you. Yeah, absolutely. What has been this process, building a new facility is unlike anything you've ever done, right?
Yeah.
It's not recruiting, it's not traveling, even far traveling. It's so complex. And there's more things that you never even thought you would have to think about during the process. What has been the most surprising to you during the process? Like, oh man, I didn't realize I had to pick the type of dirt or something. I don't know. What's been the kind of maybe the most surprising to you?
Well, I think one of the things that caught me off guard was how detailed some things are and how many different options there are and how there's not a right answer
Mm-hmm.
to some things. I think that's the thing that's the most interesting is, they present two different options and they all have their own merits. They all have their own, and you have to pick what's best for where are you. When you think about, I think we all are a lot more, you know, centralized on who we are, where we are, what we've seen. But when you realize there's so many different places where a permeable surface may work better for one area of the country versus where we are, a non-permeable works better. And they have their benefits. There's a reason both exist, but it seems like, well, why are they the same price, or why is it? You don't understand it. There was just so much for us to learn. And this is everybody's learning, because we have an athletic director who,
Right.
has never went through this. We have a president who's never went through it. So all the people going through this process have never been through it. We don't know the difference. We're asking lots and lots and lots and lots of questions. And there are lots of decisions that have to be made that it's just like, wow, I didn't realize this even mattered. I didn't know. I just thought, just make a track, do what you do. Like, you guys make tracks all the time. Just make us one. Um, and it didn't quite work like that. So, you guys are the ones that make these every day. We've never done this before. Tell us what to do. So, one thing that I think we laid a lot of reliance on, it was the same company doing our track. Geoservices is the same company that did Kennesaw State's, and we were at Kennesaw earlier this year, and they have a beautiful, beautiful track, and we followed through with a lot of what they did. We felt like if it was good enough for Kennesaw State, it was probably good enough for us and what we're doing. So we felt really confident being able to go see what they did elsewhere, knowing that it was going to be an awesome product for us. So I think just the level of detail that there is in creating a facility um, really caught me off guard.
I think this is another positive to your unique position as a director with minimal coaching roles or
Yeah.
responsibilities, right? Because I mean, there's hours in a day where you have, as a coach, you have to be on the track coaching. those are hours in the day that you could really spend on researching of the different, surfaces and equipment and,
Yep.
design layout, like that triangle between the chute and the oval. I think that's going to be unique. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah.
That's things that coaches now have to do, plus get on the track and coach jumpers and throwers and stuff like that. So I think that's another great positive to that position, man. I really, really like it. Adam, man, this is awesome, man. I'm just so pumped for you.
Thank you.
The program, like I said, healthy things grow, right? So for the program to have a new facility, the amount of athletes you're going to be able to serve increases, the quality of athletes that you're going to serve increases, and it's just a great healthy thing for our sport. So I'm just so pumped for that specific aspect for you there at Brewton-Parker, and I'm just so thankful you spend time for us, man. I appreciate your openness and authentic self of being like, hey, man, I struggle with this. So you did great, man. You're a rock
Thank you.
star. Don't
I appreciate it.
remember, you don't have to make things bigger than they are, because they are big, and you did a great job, man. You really did.
That means a lot. Just little validations like that, I think, go a long way. I think one thing, if I can plug one thing before I go, it would mean a lot to me. I'm serving on our mental health coalition for our conference, and it's something that I struggle with. It's something that's really important to me. What you just said means so much to me, and your whole process through starting this interview with me, your story matters. There's so much that you do. You're such a calming presence. You do a phenomenal job making people feel comfortable who are uncomfortable. Mental health, you don't know. I talked to my wife the other day. I said, I just had a panic attack. And she goes, I didn't know. I guess I'm a bad wife. I didn't notice it. And it's one of those things where we're suffering in silence. And I think people like you do a phenomenal job giving us confidence, making us feel validated. And I want to compliment you on that, because I think you do an amazing job of it, not only with this interview, not only with how you set up the interview, but what you do on social media. You bring so much positivity to the world. And I just appreciate you. When I still didn't know what I was doing, you reaching out to me, saying wonderful things like you always have during our entire conversations. You've given me a lot of confidence and validation that really provided the strength I need to keep going on some days. So don't underestimate how much impact you can have just by saying something kind, polite, nice. We're all struggling with different things, and we oftentimes struggle in silence. So just be kind to one another, because you never know who's struggling in silence.
I love it, man. That's a literal mic drop moment right there, brother. I do it. Kind of a quick explanation. I do it for two reasons. One, you deserve it. My life was affected so positively by coaches, specifically track coaches, and then my career started as a track coach. So the impact that I've been able to make, and that the athletes made on me. So to me, every coach deserves to have their story told, right? I've joked about that's like Pokemon. I'm trying to catch them all. Like if I could just do this full time, trust me, guys and gals, we would have a new episode every day, 2 episodes a day, because I would be getting every coach out there their story told, because they deserve it, right? Unfortunately, I got this job I got to do and things like that, but two, it's real easy, especially on social media. Like I'm on this like mini crusade of like, social media is not bad. Social media can be bad, certainly, just like picking up the phone and talking face to face can be bad, so it's really easy to be bad and negative and judgy, and a lot of people do it. So I figure if people do it in abundance for no reason, like just to be mean and spiteful, well, then I can be the exact opposite. Then I can be loving
Sure.
and encouraging and friendly for no reason. Like, I just got done in the month of, what are we in, May? So the month of April, I just sent out 5,000 tweets. That's a lot. So if you do 5,000 divided by 30 days, that's a lot of day, right? There were some days I had 400. It's on the weekends when I when I ain't working, but 95% of them are just simple replies of, "Hey, congrats on your PR. Like, that's really special.
Yep.
Like, good job. Hey, school
Love it.
records are special." And I'm doing it to. I don't want to overstate it and say most coaches know who I am, but
Yep,
First of all, they're getting replies from
they
an
do.
account that says "I love track and field coaches," so they're automatically a little bit like, "All right, this guy just likes who I am and what I do," right? But a lot of them are too, because typically the tweet will post the or tag the athlete, maybe an athletic director or parent or something like that. So most of my tweets are going to people who have zero clue who I am, zero clue who Gill Athletics is. To be real frank, I am literally a stranger that says, "Hey man, good job," instead of the stranger that says, "Hey, you're a jerk. Hey, you're not fit. Hey, you're not qualified." I'm the guy. That's my whole life. My calling is I'm the guy that you may never know who I am, and I'm okay with that because it's not about that. It's not about me. It's about, hey, you are worthy. You do deserve it. You are awesome. So I'm just, Adam, what you said to me there. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's more to come because it's just every day, man. I just love it, and I'm okay if I annoy people that way. I'm okay if you say, "Man, you tweet out a lot." Yeah, you're right. I tweet out a lot of positive things.
Positive.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So what is that?
Yes.
Sorry, not sorry. Okay,
Exactly.
I'm gonna keep going. So, Adam, man, positively love you to death, man. I'm so happy that you gave me the most important and most valuable thing you can give me, and that's your time. I know you're busy, so so grateful, so grateful. Obviously, we're super excited to see the equipment on your track. Please, and I know you will, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Please
Oh
send
yeah.
lots of pictures, man. I can't
Oh
wait to
yes.
see that. I can't wait to see my favorite thing. I saw this with Oregon and Michigan and some other schools when they open up new facilities. They'll have a camera crew there for when the athletes first come out. I mean, there's some amazing smiles when they hit PRs and win conference and things like that. But those smiles when they see their new home, that's special, man. So I love seeing pictures of the kids seeing like, wow, man, I used to go to this high school, I had to beat the dark, and now I can come here at 10 a.m. anytime I want. I can come out to my facility. So we're just super pumped for the growth that you guys are having there at Brewton-Parker. Super pumped that your administration is backing up their words and supporting you and the coaching staff there. We're excited for the future for you, and I know you are as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for, just taking the time with me as well. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. You deserve it, brother. Have a great day.
Thank you.